right, friends, how's everybody doing today? That's almost like I'm ready for my snack time. It is indeed 4:30. Did you grab a snack? I hope you did. We're actually pretty excited because I think it's the first time we've ever done something like this at Microsoft, where we actually take the keynote demo that we showed in the morning. If you didn't see it, you're going to see it for the first time today. And we're actually going to show you how we built it. And we're actually going to release the code for you so you can look at it. Is that right? Yeah. How cool is that? Yeah. Because the first thing that it's important to recognize is it's a real app. I'll tell you what I did. I built the actual web and backend and infrastructure. That was me. Amanda made all of the agents that are in the system. She's going to tell you about it. And then Elijah made sure it was all safe. So it wasn't like we were actors pretending that this was a thing that was happening. It was actually real. And hopefully if you were there, you could tell. This is actually really happening. And so it's actually really code. Because we want to show you something real. Because if we are telling you to build something and use it, we might as well do it too, right? So we're going to turn over to Amanda, who's going to explain a little bit and set some context.
Yeah. So I think Seth might have gotten a little bit ahead of himself.
Oh,
but
man.
Really the point of his talk, which he did emphasize well, is that we are going to go through the process of what exactly we did to build this application. And it looked a lot different a few weeks ago.
It sure did.
We're going to start the scene first, though, before we jump into the app, by talking about just some basic concepts about what is an agent, which you've probably heard multiple times, as well as what is an agent in the context of an application, and how has that kind of evolved. Next, we're going to jump into single agents, which is actually what we started with. What you saw on the screen was a multi-agent application, but originally we had just one single agent. And then through the process of evaluating it, and again, going into some of our agent-specific metrics, we decided to kind of pivot and change direction, but Elijah's going to get into that more later. And then lastly, we're going to wrap it up with just really what we learned. But this is really going to be about kind of the context of this app and what we learned throughout the process. But I do think we learned a lot, so let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So to start out, you've probably heard this a bunch, but we're going to talk a little bit about what is an agent, which may seem like a simple question, but it is something that isn't really agreed upon across the industry, and maybe not even always across our company. But I think what an agent is, we'll show you more later in show not tell, which is something we like to say, but it's truly defined by, like I said earlier, a model, instructions, and then some tools. And then what kind of differentiates it from kind of an AI conversation is an agent is goal-driven, which means it doesn't necessarily know what questions we're going to ask it and what sequence of events it's going to have to take. We just give it a generic goal, like planning an event. And for some events, it might have to find a venue, generate some social media, like find a caterer. And for others, it might just be about sending out calendar invites. And again, based on that one goal, it can kind of use its tools and configuration to define the steps it needs to take to solve that problem. So now we're going to pass it off to Elijah to give us kind of more of a background on the evolution of LLM-based solutions.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Amanda, for that intro and to kind of get us set the table here for what we're going to talk about today. So as I'm sure a lot of you guys here in the room know, this industry is moving extremely quickly.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started at Microsoft, I was primarily working on RAG workflows and just an LLM calling some data, and then that was it. You would just kind of get a response with some citations. And that was kind of the no agent, and that was maybe the beginnings of some agentic, I guess what we consider framework, if you count RAG and vectorization as kind of a tool of such. But even before that, with GPT-2 and 3.5, you really could it was just like a call and response kind of back and forth. And so that's where kind of we started. And then we moved into this single agent workflow, which you can see here, and this is kind of more what I was talking about, where you have an agent that's interacting with some sort of external database or using search. We have a Bing search tool that we were going to talk about today. And interacting then with kind of the outside world. I love to say that agents are just LLMs that can do things. And so this is what we kind of saw with the single agent, is that you can now kind of do kind of simple tasks specific to a certain, whatever tools were available to that agent. But now we've evolved into these very complex and I love how it says they're wide scope use cases where you can put a lot of these different agents together to be able to accomplish a wide variety of tasks. And you can have multiple agents that are specific to, hey, and here in this slide we have coding agent, an analytics agent, a retrieval agent, and then you can have those all then surface that information kind of in a cohesive workflow, almost like its own mini company, if you will, or mini kind of workforce to work with you. And I loved from both Satya's keynote and from Jay's keynote, just like that, this is where we're going, is very much an agent-driven world. So that's really exciting. And then if we want to go slide.
All right, so if you think about it, at a foundational level, effectively what we've done as programmers is we've been able to create a new control structure at the base layer. Think about it. It's basically now a model together with instructions, together with a collection of tools, or think of them as just functions that it can execute. This now becomes a new programming control structure at its lowest layer. Because before, if we can go to the next slide, we kind of built these kinds of applications a little bit differently, right? The architecture was a little bit different. It was fixed, it was rule-based, we had to come up with all the rules, we hard-coded our flows, our button, it was limited. Now, after Agentic AI, because we have this new control structure that, again, has the model, the instructions, and the tools, what we're able to do is we're able to actually take English or language and convert that into control flow. Does that make sense? And that's what makes these things actually agentic, because they have agency or the ability to choose how your program proceeds. And that's what makes agentic programs different. But because it makes them different, we need to figure out a way to make them reliable. And that's the challenge, right? And this is what we kind of struggled with as we were making this app, because we were told we were going to show it live on stage with our new EVP, and we're like, we need to make sure it does the right thing, right? And so that is the before and the after. If we can go to the next slide here. And so it turns out that instead of deciding control flow and figuring out how we're going to data structure this thing or while loop this thing, successfully developing agentic applications requires you to think about, what do we want these things to do in terms of a prompt? What do we want in terms of like the instructions? What do we want them to do in terms of tasks? How do we put these things together? Because now, if you have this single control structure that basically takes language and uses a model to execute on functions, how do we put them together in a way that's reliable? And then finally, how do we actually know it's reliable? And we kind of went through this journey ourselves where we try to put everything into a single, well, I don't want to get into it yet because they're going to talk about it. And we figured out that this is not the way. And so this is what we're going to show you today a little bit about it. But I think maybe we should start with like the actual thing.
Yeah, I think we should show
Let's
it to
do
them.
it.
Seth, do you first want to give an overview? I know you started off this process.
Oh, yeah. So when I started this app, I thought I want to do something voice because I had done voice at the last show. And it kind of grabs you, right? Because it's like, wow, I feel like I'm in the future. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, we don't have the Jetsons flying cars, but if I can talk to a computer like on Star Trek, then we've made it. I think that, right? Thank you. I didn't make any of it. I just used it, right? And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to make it so that we would tell the computer to do something, and it would be like, I will take care of it. And it will do it, right? Because if we can use this control structure to actually tell other things to do stuff, then let's do it. And so basically this application is an envisioning of that. And should I tell them how we built it originally? Because when we make demos for executives, the scenario is very late binding.
And we can show you what we did to get around that.
That's right.
Which is, have to give credit where credit is due. This is all on Seth.
Yeah, I knew that they might change the scenario up to last Friday. So how do we build a multi-agent application that allows it to have instructions and a set of tasks that could be kind of ubiquitous? And so she's turning on the debug mode of the app that you didn't see. And what are we looking at here, Amanda?
So we essentially, we did build events, but we also built something that has been helping write our documentation during our GA release of Azure AI Foundry Agent Service. And what you see on the screen right now is I can switch. I guess we used to have a generic kind of purple background so we could do any scenario. Then we got this help built in. But previously, we'd be able to switch between build events and something like a documentation writer to help us with our GA docs in like under 10 minutes just by refining this prompt for the voice controller, as well as this is our Foundry project and all of the agents we have created in this project. So as long as the agents are all in the same project, you just have to write a new prompt, and then you can literally go from, I mean, you'll see it here. We could go do Satya's travel demo.
That's right.
Go do build events.
The Vibe travel demo was in the same project, so we could switch to that and talk to it too. And if you look at the drop-down, did you show them the drop-down of the different ones we had? We could switch what the thing did, because like I said, I don't know if you know this, if you ever work on executive demos, something changes, like we need to do a new scenario, or legal says we can't use this name, and so we did not know what the scenario was going to be up until like, I think it was a week and a half ago.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it kept changing.
But that's okay, because we made an agentic app that doesn't care. It doesn't care. Should we show them?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's show
What
it.
scenario are we going to do? Are we going to do a fun one or the same one? I think we should do a different one.
I think we should do a fun one.
Okay, let's do a fun one.
Yeah, one thing, I know you saw a very specific scenario, and if you went to the page, you probably would have seen me practicing about 100 times the same scenario. However, let's do something else. I just wanted to make sure I had that down.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can really plan any event.
All right, let's see. Shh, you got to be quiet, it'll hear us.
Hello. How can I assist you today?
Hi, I'd like to plan a birthday party for Seth Juarez on July 31st, 2025. He doesn't have that many friends, so there's only going to be about 10 people there, and our budget is about $100, and this is in Seattle. Can you find an event venue?
I'm searching for a venue in Seattle to host
$100?
Seth Juarez's birthday party
given you
on July 31st, 2025. I'll update you once I have some options. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the party
so happy
plans?
about that crap. She should have said no. It should have said no. It's not a she. It's an it, right?
It's an id.
Tell us what you're seeing. Oh, it did it. Sorry, it's too fast.
Yeah. I think we want to have it at the Cloud Room. That sounds like his vibe. And could you now send out the calendar invites to his invite list? I know there might not be that many people, but could you send it out?
I've sent out the calendar invites for Seth Juarez's birthday party
Right now,
at
I'm
the
adding
Cloud
filler
Room.
words just because
Is there
when I did it
anything
earlier,
else
I
you'd
tried
like
to
to
be very
arrange
crisp
for the
and to
celebration?
point, but if you were actually talking to it live, you'd probably had
The
a bunch
calendar
of like or
invites
and
have been
you'd be
sent
thinking
out,
as you were
and the
talking.
attendees have been notified about Seth Juarez's birthday party at the Cloud Room.
And Amanda, could you
Is
explain
there
how did we
anything
get
else you'd
these
like me to
events,
assist with?
These event venues.
These event venues are generated from using the new Grounding with Bing custom search tool.
Hold on, I want to show them. It actually sent the invite, and Jay, our EVP, he's like, "Can you put me on the invite list so I can show?" So how many invites did he get to a hackathon?
I mean, way too many. Way
So
too many.
this actually sent the event. You can see it, right? You can see it right here. Well, you can't, but it's right here. Right? Let's clap for. Hold on, but it still does more stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah. Could you now generate an image to promote Seth's birthday as well as draft some content? You can make the image quirky, but you can have full creative liberty besides that.
I'm working on generating a quirky image and drafting content to promote Seth's birthday party.
it
I'll
makes it-
update you as soon as you're ready for your review.
It
I've
makes it-
drafted the content
gosh.
for Seth's birthday party
does this
promotion.
say?
Once the image is ready,
sad?
I'll present both for your approval.
Do you approve, Seth?
By the way, it generates a new image.
I've generated a quirky and colorful image for Seth's birthday party invitation. Would you like to see it along?
Hi, I think colorful is a great way to describe Seth's personality. Could you post both the image and this draft to LinkedIn?
The post featuring the colorful image and the drafted content for Seth's birthday party is being posted to LinkedIn. I'll let you know once it's live.
And this is the one that took a long time. This is the
We
one
call
that took a
this the drama
The
agent.
LinkedIn post for Seth's birthday party is now live. If there's anything else I can assist you with, feel free to let me know.
Is it there?
There it is.
Big news.
Did you say $100? That's sad, but yeah, it's probably true. By the way, that image is new every time. Every time she did this, every time this executed, it was a brand new experience. It was a real thing. I don't know how to say this but it was actually real. And that's the thing that we pride ourselves on, is we want to build products that do real things. And this is a real agentic app. And you can feel it's different, right? You can feel it's different. Sorry, I just had to be excited about this. All right, so what's next?
What's next is we're actually going to go into how we built the agents, which is the part I did in this application. But to get started, we didn't really know if we wanted a single agent or a multi-agent application, or what would work best. I mean, there were a lot of people telling us what we needed, but we wanted to really figure out for ourselves like what was truly the best for our use case, because I think there's just so much out there, and I don't know, all of us, like we said, we really will not show you something unless we truly understand it.
Right.
So what we built, though, for the agents is we ended up using our Azure AI Foundry agent service. And the reason we did this is because, like kind of Seth said, is it really addressed a lot of the complexity, and it helped us truly build, deploy, and scale these agents super fast and kind of into play with the whole changing scenarios. We needed a way to pivot, and pivot quick, and pivot fast. So we specifically even tried to build more like task-based agents, like posting to LinkedIn or creating a calendar event or sending an email, that truly are just useful in our daily life and applicable in any scenario. So that was kind of our mentality. But I think before we go, before we get deeper into our application, one call out I think is really important to make that doesn't get said enough is that none of this would be possible without our enterprise foundation. We know because MSIT is very, very strict.
That's right.
But truly, like, security is our top priority and should be a top priority when building agentic applications, especially because all of these agents have to, in some cases, take actions on our behalf, interact with external systems, and there's just a lot of places where security threats and vulnerabilities could come into play. And that is why we like to say that Azure AI Foundry runs on trust, not trends. That's a slogan that I'm very proud of.
And yeah, it's a great one. Yeah, because you're going to be bombarded with a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, if you're going to want to build an actual application, you're going to need to have the trust that Azure has brought to you for the last, I don't know, 600 years, I think, in computer time, right? That's why I love trust, not trends.
Yeah, I know. We love our tools, but like truly at the end of the day, we believe the biggest barrier before you actually go out there and let agents autonomously act on your behalf is going to be trust, and we understand that, and I think we want more people to be willing to try our agents. That's why we've been trying them and testing them with our work ourselves, because we're really confident in the products we are building. And speaking of trust, I know a top priority has also been, over the last 6 months, our agent ops tools, including support for integrated tracing in the agent playground, brand new evaluation metrics that Elijah will get into more later, as well as the ability to monitor and assess your applications on Azure Monitor, and finally, the ability to scan for vulnerabilities using the AI red teaming agent. One more thing in the kind of built-in enterprise readiness that I know we pride ourselves on at Foundry Agent Service is that we have 3 distinct setup modes to suit different customer needs. We understand that a lot of people come and they want to get started as quick as possible, and that is why we have our basic setup. You don't need a lot of prerequisites, and there's really only an account and project that you need to create. And then other than that, like, we take care of all of the like agent states and storage for you. And you may ask, especially a lot of people ask me frequently, how is this different from the OpenAI Assistants API? I will tell you. So the basic setup is a wrapper on top of the Assistants API. And what is new and what is the value add is we have a bunch of brand new tools that are Azure specific, like grounding with Bing Search, SharePoint, Fabric, Azure AI Search, and many more, as well as we understand that customers don't want to be locked into a specific model and they want beyond just OpenAI models, which is why we are committed to consistently like keeping our model offerings up to date and allowing customers to choose a model that best suits their use case. Next, we have our standard setup, which has all of these new tools like basic setup, but now provides the ability to bring your own resources. And what that really means is that all data processed by the service will be stored in your own resources that you have full visibility and full control over, so that all of your customer data remains just, again, under your control. And then finally, we have the ability to bring your own virtual network as well to ensure, again, an extra layer of security for our enterprise customers that want it. And you might ask now, like, how would that look between basic and standard? My favorite example to give is with the file search tool. When you're using our basic setup, a file gets uploaded, a vector store gets created, and then I can't go into Azure Portal and actually like see that distinct like storage account and see that file because we're managing and taking care of all of that for you. But with the standard setup, I could go into Azure Portal, go to my storage account, I'd be able to see my file, and then same with the vector store, I'd be able to go to my Azure AI Search resource and I would see my index created. So.
And I think another great example was, if for those who were at the keynote today, that I showed was also that we could thread storage is stored. Also, you could either have us store it in the managed storage in the basic setup, or you could just bring your own database and then have all of the threads and whatnot and customer data protected and stored right there. So I think there's a lot of different great use cases for folks who really are serious and about trust and security.
Yeah, and I love the idea that when we're looking at this stuff, when we talk about it, we're talking about normal things at this point. Do you notice that? Then there's the AI thing, but everything else is just normal things. And so you don't have to throw away what you have. You can bring the new stuff to what already exists with the Azure AI Agent Service, and you can start to build these applications with the confidence that Amanda was telling about. Trust.
Exactly.
Trust, sorry, I got it wrong.
Trust, not trends.
That's right, there you go. We should make a shirt. Absolutely. All right, what's next?
So now we are going to jump into the code a little bit, and I'll switch my screen. But like I said earlier, in the process of actually building this multi-agent application, we first started with a single agent, and again, we weren't really sure what we wanted at this point.
Maybe Control Plus a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just old.
No, you're good. Is that too big?
Is that good?
Is that good?
Got some thumbs up.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so like I said, as we were starting this process, we weren't really sure which agentic pattern we wanted to use. So I know Elijah and I are both on the agent service team, and we've built a lot of agents, but we started specifically thinking about interesting scenarios, and one of them that came to mind was social media. So we built a social media kind of manager agent. That's where LinkedIn came into play, and I'll walk you through some of like the code and how we built it with our Azure AI Foundry Agent Service. So to get started, we will initialize our project client, and this just ensures that I've actually been added as a user to my project and have the correct permissions to actually create and edit these agents. And then next, we are actually going to add some tools. Specifically, before this demo, I've already created an Azure AI Search Index, and because we're going to publish all of this code live, I had to put in some just demo data, which is this Contoso tents dataset, not only can they build events, they have some great tents. And this is just like, I wanted to have this here because truly when I ask it questions in a second, we can come up and like double check its work and double check how our tools are performing. So to actually, again, connect this tool and give my agent access to it, all I have to do is create a project connection to my Azure AI search resource. Then from there, I would get the connection ID, as you can see here, and then I'm initializing the AI search tool. And I have additional parameters, like I can specify the query type or filter or some other, there's as much customization as you want or as little, because we also have smart defaults based on the type of Azure AI search index you're using. So then I'll add that to my tool set. And then the second tool I ended up adding was the Bing grounding tool, just because I wanted my agent to have access to real-time information. Specifically in this case, I wanted it to be performing, because it's a marketing agent, like research and competitor analysis, and that was the use case I had in mind. As you can see, similar to the Azure AI search tool, all I had to do was create a Bing grounding resource, create a project connection. I've already done this, but I promise you it's about 30 seconds to a minute. It's super quick. And then, as you can see, all I have after that is like 2 or 3 lines of code to actually add these tools. So one thing I think you'll see, but I really want to emphasize, is how easy we've made it to add such powerful tools that give our agent the ability to do a wide variety of tasks across many use cases. So then I've initialized my Bing grounding tool, and then finally, I used the OpenAPI tool to actually call a logic app that I created, which originally I had it set up to my LinkedIn account, which turned out to be not the best, because I had authorized some other individuals like Elijah and Seth to use the project, which meant that because I'd given them that permission and I'd also, again, authorized the logic app to post on my behalf, I was on my public main LinkedIn having just some fun posts pop up all the time. But that's why we set up a company page for Build Events, and that no longer happens. But after I've created my 3 tools, as you can see, I've also going to be loading in an instruction file, and I will pull that up because this is the one that I have finally landed on. One thing I'll talk a little bit about here, but really go into deeper later, is like the importance of a good prompt. What you see on the screen is something that I've like refined again and again, and whenever the agent doesn't do what I want, I'm basically plugging it into an LLM and then telling it what happened and asking it to improve it. And I'll get more into that later, but let's go back to the code.
And I think, Amanda, just saying about that, like, and we're going to jump into this more later, but just that prompt refinement process is critical, and no one better to do a prompt in LLM than another LLM. But we'll talk about that more later. Yeah.
And then now we're finally at the best part, creating our agent. So like I had said, we're passing in a model. Here I'm using GPT-4o. My instructions we just looked at, we're passing those in as well. And then we're passing in our 3 tools. And now let's get this agent in action and see what it can do.
There it's running. Here we go.
Yeah, everything we're doing is live, so bear
All
with
live
us.
all the time.
Okay, so as you can see, my agent has been created, and then the thread as well. Let's ask it about the brand of tents that we sell at Build Events by Contoso and Tents.
Here we go. Do, 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 do.
Do, 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 do.
We always just sweat on these, right? Because is it ever going to respond? Because we're showing this stuff live, right? Did it respond?
Yeah.
Oh, I was trying to fill time. It was really fast.
And now I'm asking it to draft a blog post to highlight our new product line of tents. And this was all, again, from that PDF I showed you earlier. Let's see. Ooh,
Hey, is it a good one?
it's about our new expedition series.
Oh, those are really
And then
good.
now let's tell it to post it.
Here's always the one that's dramatic.
I know.
When you're dealing with external APIs, let's see.
But in the meantime, I can actually show you our great VS Code extension. You can see me practicing. It gives you all the details. Oh, it looks like our post was live, but let me finish this. I think this is an important thing to point out. A thread is essentially a unit of conversation between like me, a user, and the agent. And as you can see, we have a lot of details. This is from previous conversations. Let me refresh. But you'll see our most recent threads. And where this comes and is super helpful is especially with debugging. Like you can see, there's probably some threads that have had errors. And this is usually the first thing I check because I can see if it's the tool that failed. I can see if like our service is down. And I can actually go into like the run step details and get even more information. And I know Elijah will get into some of the kind of more agent evaluation specific metrics later, but just wanted to point this out because this is a great debugging tool that I know we all use every day. So now we'll, moment of truth, go back to LinkedIn, hoping
Still
we have a
excited
new
for your birthday
post.
party, Seth.
Yeah, my 10th birthday.
And as you can see, we now have a post promoting our new product line of tents, which is coming soon.
Clap.
But really, I know with the application we wanted to build and demo in the keynote, we knew it was going to be more complex, and we weren't 100% sure which approach was best. So that's why we turned to evaluations, to the data, to give us the answers.
Figure it out. And can I tell them one funny story, Amanda? So as she mentioned, we were all testing this a lot, making sure it was posting to LinkedIn, and Amanda did temporarily get banned on LinkedIn.
Twice.
So,
Yeah,
twice.
We had to send an email to LinkedIn VPs, and twice.
Twice, yes.
Yeah. and
Personal account and a fake account.
yeah, that's right. That's true.
So we encourage everyone and use APIs responsibly and use agents responsibly, especially when you're dealing with external data and external APIs, so you use them correctly. So yeah, I want to jump into, well, first I want to ask everyone a question. How many people have seen cool stuff at Build? Can we just have a quick raise of hand? But there's been some pretty cool stuff the last couple of days. How many of you people are like, you know, this stuff is really cool, but I don't know if my boss is going to let me implement it, or I don't know if we're going to build. Okay, we got to see. I knew that was, we're going to have some hands. So that's why I loved what Amanda said earlier about we're really here at Azure focused on trust and making sure that your enterprise data is safe and secure, as well as evaluating then these agents to make sure that, hey, they're doing what I'm supposed to, and they're not randomly posting on LinkedIn or doing a bunch of other random crap that then is going to get us or our company in trouble. And so as part of that, we already kind of talked, Amanda talked so greatly about the basic standard and then BYO setups, but another key aspect that we want to focus on is evaluations. Are my agents consistently delivering high quality results, and are they doing what I tell them to do? And so we already had a great slew of evaluations already, but now we're adding even more evaluations. So big shout out to the Azure AI Evaluations team. They do fantastic work, as well as our Office of Responsible AI that's located in New York and that me and Amanda get to interact with a lot. So that's awesome. And so you can see here, we have a bunch of new great evaluations and specific to agents around intent resolution, tool call accuracy, task adherence, and response completeness. And so Amanda kind of alluded to the fact that originally when we were building this app, the approach that we took was, let's just try to cram all of this stuff into one app, have it do a bunch of different things, and just hope it works and it can call the right tool. What we learned, though, in both just kind of anecdotally, and then we're going to show here, backed up by kind of the evidence. Switch to 2, please. Oh, I'm going to go right over here. And just go like this. I'm going to show my screen.
Nice.
I think that's yours. My bad.
Three.
Three.
Here we go.
Wonderful. And here's some of the documentation around agent evaluators. Evaluation, you can evaluate your agents locally, even with the Azure AI SDK, Evaluation SDK. So definitely go check out our docs. And then what I want to focus on specifically today is how do we run an evaluation in GitHub Actions. So first I'm going to show I have this big set of evaluations, and what was really cool is that in the process of building this demo and everything, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so folks can see, we were doing I was learning about CI/CD pipelines and all this stuff, and Jessica from the GitHub team, who was also in the keynote with us today, was like, hey, wait, we have this great GitHub Models feature now. And I think a lot of you are asking, like, why would I need a model in GitHub? Like, I already have my Azure OpenAI deployment, or I have a deployment elsewhere. Like, why would I need this? But what's great about the GitHub models is then it then allows you to enhance your DevOps experience. So there are a ton of different use cases. What we ended up using it for, though, is to generate a summary of the evaluations that we're using to make sure that what our agent is exactly doing. So if you have your boss or someone who's not familiar with the DevOps process, or just anyone could come in here, look at this little summary that the LLM generated, and know exactly what's going on here. Because I know as devs, the last thing we want to do is write some more documentation. I've been writing a lot of documentation over the last 2 weeks, and not a super fun part of the job. I'd rather just be building things. And so we can use LLMs are great at generating summaries and natural language. And so this was a great kind of feature that we, once again, in this process of building these demos, you just learn so much. And so that was really great. And big shout out to the GitHub team for that. And so here we have all of the various, we have first kind of a generalist agent, which was the one that Amanda showed where, and generalist agent, what we mean by this is just we have all these tools under one agent. So it's generating social media content, it's posting the content, it's looking for venues, and doing all that stuff. But what we realized was that, hey, actually sometimes it'll get confused and it'll try to do content before, or then it will try and post without an image, or it would just kind of get confused another time. And so,
sorry. Amanda and I are laughing because I'm so ashamed. We called it the fat agent, PHAT, as it tried to do too much because it was too cool for itself. So when you were looking at me, that's what you were thinking the whole time.
Yeah, Seth just decided to name it that, and it kind of stuck, unfortunately. So that's why.
We don't mean it in a bad way. We meant like PHAT, you're too cool for your britches, you do too much stuff. So that's why we had a giggle. So just so you know. Sorry, Elijah.
All good, all good. And so anyway, so we tried to do that, and if you look, and then we also then took the approach of, hey, why don't we break these tasks into a bunch of different agents just to see if it can do it a little bit better and perform a little bit better. And what's really, really interesting is that as we...
Wait, do you want?
No, it's okay. I'll introduce that in a second. So as you can see, that the generalist agent actually in operational metrics runs a little bit faster, and in a lot of ways does a lot of it better. And in these other AI quality-related metrics around intent passing, does about the same, if not better. And for specific context here, the data we originally ran was related to all the different tasks. So there I had a couple questions about social media, about content writing, a couple questions about event venue, a couple questions about, hey, will you post this to LinkedIn, all in one data set.
How did you generate that data set?
I generated it using Azure OpenAI GPT-4o. Because once
So helpful.
Yes, really. Using AI in all parts of life
What
to be able to.
We passed in the system prompt as well. to actually generate it. So
yeah. To really look at what you should be doing, exactly what you should be doing. But then we had this thought, wait a second, let's take a step back here. Each agent and each task is fundamentally different, right? Fundamentally different, and that we want to make sure that the agent is performing its best specific to every single task. So then we ran another set of evaluations where you can see here, I'm only comparing the generalist agent against one other agent. Does that make sense? And this agent, its only job is to do social media content writing. And it's the social media content writer agent, which we can see here, runs a little bit slower and uses a little bit more tokens, but performs significantly better in a lot of these benchmarks. And so then let's pivot into the slide here, Amanda, of why this is happening and why we did this. And that is because instead of relying on just one generalist agent, we can leverage many different experts. Think about it in your own job. You have your specific job. I'm a product manager. Amanda's a product manager. Seth does it all. I don't know what he does.
AI connoisseur.
AI connoisseur.
I eat AI for dinner.
But then we have folks from the marketing team here. We've got folks from all different walks of Microsoft that you do your specific job. And then, yeah, maybe sometimes you do other stuff and you get your hands dirty, but you are really the expert in your job. And with agents, it's no different. So, and that was kind of the key finding, I think one of the key findings. We had a lot of key findings in this. About really when you're dealing with agents and the situation becomes a little bit more complex, telling them to do a lot of stuff all at once confuses them just like it would confuse a person. And so the decision we made was, hey, let's break this up into multiple different agents. And then that's where those evals came in where, hey, this agent, the social media content agent, is really good at writing a blog post. This other one is really good at posting to LinkedIn because that's all it has to think about, that's all it has to do. And then the other ones, of finding a venue, all it has to do is find a venue. And so that was a really interesting finding. And then when you're able to then go to your boss and say, hey, look, our system is performing well, it's doing its task every single time, then that's where the real value add is, I think, where you can confidently say, hey, not only is this technology that I saw it build really cool, but we can evaluate it to ensure that it's performing and doing exactly what it needs to be doing at each step of the way.
That's right. And the cool thing about it is we had this intuition early on, and then Elijah came and we're like, hey, can you evaluate this stuff? And we found that the generalist agent, which we had an intuition that it might not work all the time. So we separated it after the fact, but then he came and really showed us.
Proved it for us.
Yeah,
Data.
Yeah, with actual data. And that was actually a pretty cool thing for us.
Yeah, another way I like to think about it is you saw that prompt file I had a few minutes ago. It was really long. And with the connected agents approach, you're essentially just taking that really long prompt and getting to break it up and give the specific agent the part of the prompt they actually need. And again, you have one instruction versus like 50. It's a lot easier to follow and do the one thing. So I think at least for me, visually, that's how I like to think about it. And I think our hypothesis was definitely right.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we have those evals to prove it.
Scientific method.
Yeah.
Hypothesis, observations,
That's right.
and then there you go, conclusion.
But as we did, again, decide eventually, especially once we wanted to expand the scope of our application, that we wanted to use multiple agents, we definitely had a few questions start to pop up. I think the first was around orchestration and what agentic pattern we should use. I know there's a lot of frameworks out there, a lot of ways to orchestrate these agents. The next was about managing threads and memory and state, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, let me walk you through kind of why we picked the orchestration or agentic pattern we did and what were some of the requirements we had when building the Build Events by Contoso application. So the first is we wanted it to be voice controlled. And not only did we want it to be voice controlled, we wanted only one single agent interacting with the end user, just from a simplicity's sake. We didn't want one chiming in here, one chiming in there. It would have gotten really chaotic, especially with voice. I think introducing multiple agents would be way too much complexity. The second, we really, like I said, didn't want just social media tasks. It should be able to find venues and caterers. We wanted to continue building on this and not just have a set of things it had to do. And we didn't want it to have to do those set things in a set order either. So truly, because of this wide scope, that's one of the main reasons we really wanted to go with that kind of sub-specific tasks agent approach. And then one thing we actually really learned with creating these sub-agents was it could still do multiple steps. And again, it didn't have to be just one action. I know posting to LinkedIn is one action, but it could do different things. But we found it worked best when the inputs and outputs were consistent, just because the voice controller then didn't get as confused and had better accuracy of actually calling the agent in the right scenarios and passing in the right context, which Seth will get into in a bit. This is a photo or a slide of our architecture that we showed. I think this is our slide, so it might not be as visually appealing, but this is what the Build Events application architecture is. We had our RSVP agent, which had the ability to create the calendar events. It could search over my contacts, and it had a default invite list. We didn't have time on stage, but we want to implement it, and truly how the file search tool is used is so the end user could just upload their invite list, and then if it didn't, it would search your contacts. That's the behavior I had with the prompt. And then it would use Logic Apps to actually send the email. We had the event space agent, which used Bing Custom Search as well as file search, because we wanted to provide some venues that were trusted venues that we had worked with and, again, kind of prioritized. And then if it didn't find one there for specific cities, it could use the Bing Custom Search tool. And then I know we've gone into them a few times, but kind of the reason, like I got into earlier, we broke up our social media agent like this was around the inputs and outputs. And this is what we found had the most consistent behavior for our application.
Well, and Amanda, I want to call out too really quick before you change the slide is, just like she said, it doesn't have to be one agent has one tool. like the event space agent, for example, was searching through files, also using Bing custom search to search for the specific venue. And so it doesn't have to be so simple, but I loved what you said about the inputs and outputs being consistently the same and the tasks being really well defined. Because I mean, originally, look how much each of those agents are doing. When we combine them all in one, that's why you saw in the evals it was so poor.
Yeah.
And so this, I think that's so great.
Yeah.
The inputs and outputs being consistent and the tasks being well defined is critical.
All right, so let's talk about conversation management, because we needed to make sure that when she talked to it, it would always talk back, number one. And as you were watching it, notice that it was doing multiple, it was like, I started this thing, I started that thing, I got anything else you want to do. And so we had to figure out a way to be able to have her talk to it, have it tell other agents to do work, and then be able to understand that the work was done. Does that make sense? And that feels tricky, right? But it turns out that the voice controller itself, we actually programmed as an agent, right? It has its own prompt. And what we did is we took all the agents that were Azure AI Foundry plus a local one. We built a couple of local ones.
Custom agent,
Custom,
as
yeah.
we call it.
Yeah, a little custom agent that run locally in our code. And what we did is we said, okay, if you start the scenario, the voice controller has the prompt, and then you just pick the collection of things that it can do, right? And what we did is when the voice controller started up, we fed those. Let me just show you the code. I'm telling you stuff. Can you switch to mine?
Yeah.
So this is the voice controller right here, and what you're going to see is this is the voice controller. You're like, oh, that's a lot of code. It is, yeah, it is, because it's the real-time API, right? And the real-time API had this event where it was like, hey, when you get started, you need to update your session, and the updated session, what it did is it took the collection of tools that you see right here. This collection of tools, and what it did is I converted each of the Azure AI Foundry agents into a tool, right? But you're wondering, well, what did you pass in as the parameters of the function so that it actually know what to do? I forced every single Azure AI Foundry agent to take two parameters: additional instructions and query. So the voice controller, and if you could find a function call in the app so that you can show them what it actually passed in, the voice controller asked for things in English. And when Amanda and I saw that the first time, we're like, is it doing the right thing? Do you want to zoom into the function? Oh, by the way, and then can you control one into that so you can see? Oh, no, you don't have zoom in there. Oh,
Nope, not on this one.
Amanda Foster.
The other computer.
The other computer. But as you look close, notice that the function call's there. Can you expand out the arguments there? That line right there, yeah. This is what it asked for. Well, this is actually the image, right? Do you have a function call with the one with the, you'll find one. So what it did is the voice controller executed these agents and said, here's some additional instructions, agent, and here's what I want you to do as a query. And so just shout out when you find, there you go. So that's how it asked the Foundry agents to do something. Right? How did we manage state, though? So what we did is we pretended that the voice controller was like another agent asking for stuff in English. And so the voice controller agent itself had its own thread of conversation, right? But then when it executed another sub-agent, that sub-agent had its own thread local state. And so what you would see when you looked at the threads is you would actually see the full voice controller, and then I added stuff into the baggage, not the baggage, that's the open telemetry words, but I added stuff inside of it so that you could go back and figure what stuff's going on. But then in the voice control thread, you would see, I'm calling this agent with these parameters. And then it would go and do its thing, and we could actually look at each thread, and then it would return back its thread. It's almost like a variable in a function that has local scope. And that's how we did it in this particular case. Is this the only way to do it?
Absolutely not.
No, it just turns out that for us to maintain a conversation, that is the way we had to do it. The other innovation that we did that I don't think anyone had ever done before, as far as I know, is in general, when a function call is issued from a model, it waits before it responds. What we did is we passed the controller a continuation on the same function ID, function call ID, to say, we are working on it. And that effectively became a back-channel communication to the voice controller so that it says, we're working on that. And then when it was done, we sent another completion on the same function call ID to the voice controller to say, I am done, and this is what I got. Do you see that? And that's what actually made it work. And so when you're looking at this stuff, that is the thing that made it do the right stuff. The voice controller became an agent that asked other agents to do that. We call that implicit orchestration, implicit agentic orchestration through function or tool calling. Because it's almost like a call stack, right? Where it's doing stuff and it can call it and it's implicitly orchestrated because the actual voice controller decides what functions to call. And Amanda, remember that one time when we were like, holy cow, it passed the exact right thing?
Yeah. Before we had even gone through this process of like refining the prompts, like I think I had just hooked in the agents. We had just kind of finally got it working and making its first calls. It passed in the direct like content writer draft from my LinkedIn post to the next agent. Like the voice controller did that without us refining or doing anything. It didn't do that consistently, but the first time it did it completely right, given the context. But Seth, do you want to go into a little bit more now how we actually got this app to perform consistently and how we debugged it and ensured like when we hit issues? I know you've done some great stuff with application level tracing that I think you should
like,
tell everyone
dude,
about.
You forgot to talk about the thing. It turns out that I actually added telemetry to this application. So every yellow thing you see there is Amanda talking to it, and every blue thing you see there is a call to another agent. And so, for example, if I were to hit this thing right here, let me go to a dependency. She's like, no, dude, you were supposed to talk about that thing. I get it now. I get it. Thanks for calling me out in front of all my friends here. Notice that we actually have the entire conversation of what actually happened. And let me use Zoom it.
Wasn't on this computer.
Oh, my bad, to do that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I want to show you is that anything that was labeled in blue is actually a call to an agent. So if I go to this thing, you're going to see the actual GET request. No, that's the health request. That's not the one I wanted. I need to find one of those. There's a health request to turn a container on, but you would actually see the post request to actually run the agent. Because what would happen is the voice controller sends its messages back to the web via sockets, and then the website would be like, I need to issue a function call, and it would post it back to Fast API, so it would happen on a separate thread. Right? So the voice controller was, and they'd be like, I need you to do this, and the website was like, go do this, and so it would post that request, and then it would run the agent, and then the post request would get a handle to the socket and communicate back. That's how this is all happening so fast. Just FYI. Is that what you meant? How I did the tracing?
Yeah.
Oh, let me show you the actual code to the tracing here. It's actually really complicated. It's really hard. Let me see.
Well, and while Seth finds that too, I think this tracing aspect fits into the whole, we want to evaluate it. We want to make sure our enterprise data is safe, and we want to make sure that it's...
Sorry, it's right there. That's it.
And not just at the individual agent level, like we talked about earlier, but also at the multi-agent application level.
Full application layer. And so, for example, we had some issues with the voice controller. I think we had some semantic VAD, voice activity. And what I did is I was able to send to the engineers, oh yeah, just look at the full thing. And they could see the entire conversation, the entire session, all the agents running. It was like an actual app in an actual production environment, which was really cool. So thank you for re-guiding me. That was awesome. Thank you.
Now we're gonna, for the last 5 minutes of our talk, go into what we learned. I know our whole presentation was basically about this, but we're gonna summarize it for you into kind of a few key takeaways we had and what you should really be thinking about when building your applications. So you might have seen this earlier. But really, we wanted to just close on this. So the key takeaways that we had after this process, if we could break it up into 4 things, were to ask yourself, do you have the right prompt? Do you have the right tools? This was fortunately handled for us because Azure AI Foundry Agent Service, like I showed, made it super easy to add tools in like 2 to 3 lines of code. Did you pick the right agentic pattern? And then lastly, is your application safe, secure, and doing what you want? The power of the prompt, I think we've all emphasized this multiple times, but truly this is something not talked about enough. I'm gonna just quickly show you because I have the data to show you how many times I've refined it. But like on this sheet, you'll see how many times, and this was like my final version of the day that I've refined these prompts. So it's been a lot. It's been a lot. But truly, like, something could be broken, like the voice controller not correctly calling an agent, and I would just go and change the prompt, and that would fix everything sometimes. It might not be always consistent, but it would fix everything, and I think it's just something we need to talk about more because I think sometimes people underestimate the power of the prompt.
Yeah. The second thing is, did you pick the right agentic pattern for your use case? We showed you one way to do it, but there's actually multiple ways to, I went too fast. There's actually multiple ways to do this. Notice that now that you have the unit construction of an agent, you can actually call it in any way that you want. Ours happened to be very specific with a controller agent that then had other agents do and return a work, but that's because the modality required it because it was voice, right? And that was the important bit. But there's a ton of other actual different patterns that we can't get into here. For us, the build events use a top-level agent that delegated to sub-agents, and we use the function calling loop as a back channel to the voice controller so that it was basically updated on what happened, and we would have the IDs of each call returned so that it knew, like, hey, I'm still working on this. This one is done. We also had a situation where some of them errored out, and we had it returned where it was like it errored out, and the voice control would be like, hey, sorry, I couldn't complete that task. Something happens to be wrong with the service. And that was also surprising.
Yeah, usually when we were debugging, it would be a game of like, if it's my agent issue or if it's Seth's issue, and we could get there pretty fast, which was, again, miraculous.
And then it turns out that it depends, the threading, the way we chose to do threading was specific to us, but you can do threading however you want. A thread is basically a unit of conversation that the agent has. We use thread global on the voice controller with thread local on the sub-agents, with the thread global only getting the input, the ins and the outs. But you may not do it that way, and that's okay. You can do whatever you like. Third, and most important, because I think we need to, this is you.
It's safe, secure, and then we left that blank because it's like
I still got open source.
And is doing what you want and delivering consistent results. Or honestly, if you can take away one thing on this slide, it would be, will my boss actually let me build this? This was so cool, and I saw all this cool stuff at Build, but will they let me put this into production? And that's what we're here about, and that's what we really pride ourselves on here at Azure AI Foundry in general, but specifically the agent service, is that we don't just want you to see, hey, whatever the coolest new live stream or technology was, but we want you guys to be able to put it in production.
Should we open source this? Should we open source this?
I think
Let's
we
go to
should.
my screen. So everyone can let's go to 4. And I'm going to say something that's going to make Amanda roll her eyes because I did this like umpteen thousand times. Sustineo is what our...
What does it mean?
Ego vo sustineo is Latin for I support you.
And we support.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is it's on my repo, it's messy, but we want to get it out to you as soon as possible. Should we make it visible to everybody? I have read and understand the... It's really going to make me do it, huh? Control C, Control...
Forgot an O, you forgot an O, you forgot an O. There we go.
There you go. So if you want to look at this code, it's there for you to look at. Thank you. And then finally, call to action. Amanda, why don't you take us home?
Call to action is, 1, obviously go check out Seth's great repo, hopefully give it a better name.
Our great repo. It's not a repo because she doesn't like the name. I get it.
I'm kidding.
Get it.
But truly, try out Azure AI Foundry Agent Service. I think we've now used it daily. I know we're using it internally. And the power of this service, I think we are just so passionate about it. We're doing everything live because we believe in it. And I hope you can see that.
And there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that
Lot
went
of
into
blood,
building it too.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate
Yeah.
it.